what would you say your best advice for any new entrepreneur, or somebody who's thinking about starting their own business? What would your best advice be to them?
Yeah. One of the reasons I started this business, I kind of got in it too, because something that I was seeing was so many women are afraid to do things. So many women are afraid to make that leap from working full time to being an entrepreneur, or they're making that leap to becoming publishing a book, whatever it is. But fear seems to hold women back. And I wanted to give them skills and tools to help get over that fear. They fear about, what will people think of me? What if my business will fail? What if, no one will come, no one will listen, or what if I'm awful? And sometimes you don't know until you do it, but it's hard, right? And sometimes it's always better in pairs. And so by being someone that just helps someone to make that leap. But a lot of entrepreneurs they have this little person in their head telling them, it won't go to work. It's not going to look good. And so I try to tell them to ignore those thoughts and just do it. Not all at once, but not about what other people think. But I think fear of what other people think hold a lot of women back. So that's one, is just try to overcome that fear and get rid of that little brain that's telling you can't do it.
Sure. So tell us about, maybe one of the things that surprised you as you were, coming into your own as an entrepreneur. What was that?
That they don't always go as planned, especially, if you have something like a pandemic. I had this whole business plan spelled out and, it was thought out, and then the pandemic hit, and you have to be able to pivot, right? Whenever you're an entrepreneur, things like that are going to happen all the time. People are going to quit on you in the very last minute. You're going to have things that just turn disastrous in a moment, and you have to be able to pivot. And that's one of the big lessons that I learned. Like, I thought, okay, I really put a ton of time into this business plan. And, I met with a lot of advisors and I did all the appropriate things, and it doesn't matter. Like, when something like the pandemic hit, it just, it changed everything for me. And so I had to go back and pretty much redo a lot of things, right? Because when I like a year ago, I was all in person, right? And then the pandemic hit and there was no in person in sight. So I did not want to do virtual. I didn't like virtual, but I realized really soon, okay, if I'm going to survive, I have to pivot and change to virtual and do some things virtually. So I learned the hard way is that, it doesn't matter how good that plan is. Sometimes it does not work out to your liking.
Sure. Can you describe to us the planning that's involved with these events, some of the things that you do to make sure that you have a good attendance and that you're presenting on, a well-known topic?
Oh gosh, there's so much planning that goes into an event. Like, some people think, oh, it's so easy. Like, I've met so many women that have said they're event planners, and then when they get into it, it's not what it looks like, the end result, because so many people don't realize all the planning, all the little details that have to work out. And, it kind of goes back to the advice of being ready for change. The same thing when you're planning events, and especially this year with the pandemic, I had to change so much with this event. I had speakers that, because of the pandemic, weren't allowed to travel. So I had to get new speakers. I had speakers that, because I had to change dates, all of a sudden they were available the first date, but then they weren't available the second date. So luckily, going into that, knowing that I've been event planning for years, I've had a backup plan, backup presenters that can do it if I need to put somebody in the last minute. So that's one thing that, as an event planner, you always have to have some backup speakers, backup equipment, backup for your backup. And that's one of the biggest, probably even advices I would give to planning an event, because things happen all the time. And last year we had an event literally right before it would start, and then boom, 8:30 hit start time and the microphone didn't work. So luckily, we have another microphone sitting at the the AV station. So we went up there and switched it out, but I didn't have that backup mic, and that was just from experience. I've had that before probably. We would have to scramble it or sit there and wait it until that mic came. So these are just things that really comes along with experience too. The more events you do, the more things you're going to learn that you need, like that backup mic. That was an experience I learned from another event. So some things you can't learn until you just do them, but a ton of planning goes into even small events. Technology is one of those that you can't always 100% depend on. And so what's the backup plan for that if your technology is not working? And so I'm having a really large event in May, and we're bringing in a speaker from Washington, D.C., via virtually. And I have to have a backup plan in case something happens and we're not able to put her on the big screen. So I have a backup plan that I'm going to do in place until we can get her up and going. So just a ton of planning, just a ton of small details. And if you're a good event planner, no one knows about those details.